Strange Stuff Sideshow. Stuff you might not know.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of Strange Stuff Sideshow with me, your host Kat Clifford, and with me, as goddamn usual, my co-host
Emily Pig.
And we are here today to talk to you about stuff relating to the spooky season, although that kind of is what we do most of the time.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know, as it's Halloween, we thought we'd ramp it up a bit, so what are we talking about today?
Okay, so I'm talking about the Headless Horseman as we know in like Western culture.
Like Sleepy Hollow and stuff?
Yes, so the Headless Horseman is a mystical figure who has appeared in folklore around the world since the Middle Ages. The figure is traditionally depicted as a man upon horseback who is missing his head. So depending on the legend, the horseman is either carrying the head or missing the head altogether and is searching for it. The Headless Horseman, as a fictional character, was introduced into Western culture through the 1820s short story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by American author Washington Irving. And this has worked itself into American folklore, legend, through literature, film, as most of us have probably seen, the Tim Burton film Sleepy Hollow, which has made it very popular.
It's a banger of a movie.
Yes. So the legend of the Sleepy Hollow, or the Headless Horseman, begins in Sleepy Hollow, New York, during the American Revolutionary War. So a fun fact about that is that Sleepy Hollow is an actual place.
Oh, really?
In New York.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they just were immortalized because of this like book and
So
film.
the guy who wrote it lived there, or?
No, so I don't know if he visited there or if he just like saw this place and was like, oh, that's a cool name, let's put that in there. Because as I talk about it more, he's used a couple things that he just like heard and was like, ooh, that's interesting, let me just chuck that into my book.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming he liked the name and was like, ooh, that seems like a spooky, village. And obviously was not a spooky village and had no kind of folklore around it until then. And then now every Halloween and every like celebration is based around the Headless Horseman, of course, because they're gonna essentially like fuel that fire and make it as prominent in their town as possible.
So the legends existed since like the Middle Ages, but then a guy wrote a book based on the folklore and set it in Sleepy Hollow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So now there's a diverse population of nearly 10,000 residents, mainly because of this book.
Mainly Headless Horseman.
Yes. But the traditional folklore holds that the horseman was a Hessian trooper who was killed during the Battle of White Plains in 1776. He was decapitated by an American cannonball, and the shattered remains of his head were left on the battlefield, where his comrades hastily carried his body away. So that's why he's searching for his...
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. What a way to die. Eventually, they buried him in the cemetery of Old Dutch Church of Sleepy Hollow. I didn't actually look to see if this place was a real cemetery.
Mm-hmm. I would
like
assume
a
it
church.
is. Maybe the name's been changed marginally. Maybe
Well,
it's like New German Cemetery.
Yes, exactly. But I'm assuming it is probably based off of that because the author seemed like he just took things and didn't make up things as much. So in this church, from which he rises as a malevolent ghost, fiercely seeking his lost head and wielding a jack-o'-lantern as a temporary replacement and or weapon. Modern versions of the story refer his rise to Halloween around the time the battle took place, which is kind of cool.
So Halloween was around the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So that's kind of why they like correlate it together, but also obviously Halloween's spooky, but it also is kind of a coincidence that it was around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So The Headless Horseman is also a novel by Mayne Reid, first published in monthly serialized form during 1865 and 1866, and subsequently published as a book in 1866. So this was kind of a different take, though. They set it in Texas and called it The Strange Tale of Texas.
Of course they did.
Yes.
Just made it all about themselves.
Yes.
So this is ours now.
Yes. So, but neither of these people actually, obviously, invented the idea of the Headless Rider. So tales of the Headless Horseman can be traced back to the Middle Ages, as like I said before, including stories from the Brothers Grimm. Of course,
Yeah,
everything is from.
I mean,
the
they
Brothers
just
Grimm.
they collected real folklore and wrote about it as well. So
Yes, exactly. So they did pretty much everything first when it came to like mainstream. And then the Dutch and Irish legend of the Dullahan, or the, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, Gang Sien, I think it is, a grim reaper-like rider who carries his head. So the likely source of Irving's horsemen can be found in Sir Walter Scott's 1796 The Chase, which is a translation of the German poem The Wild Huntsman by Gottfried Berger, and likely based on Norse mythology. So he wasn't the first person to actually write the book. He was just the first person to write, the Headless Horseman and Sleepy Hollow in an American fashion.
Oh, and so as soon as it was like set in America, people were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pay this attention now.
Yes, which is common. And
Yeah.
to be fair, I think is kind of a good thing, because then it becomes more of a story. And I hate that it has to be Americanized in order for something to actually gain traction. But it is good when something does gain traction.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Irish folklore, which is kind of the most interesting part of this entire thing, so the Dullahan, or the Dark Man, is a headless demonic fairy, usually riding a horse and carrying his head under his arm.
It just sounds exhausting, carrying your head everywhere.
Yes.
Why has none of them tried to just stick it back on, like super glue it?
I don't think he's ever found it, but if he does,
But if he's riding with his head,
yes.
I mean,
But it, yeah.
well, just stick it on like a broom handle and just shove it down your neck and have like an extra long neck.
But the whole issue is that if it is from the cannonball that blew up his head, that head is not really a head.
Oh, in piece. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
So you just drag
it
it around
is a
his,
head,
like,
but it's
bits of his head.
yes. So he's never gonna be able to put it on because it's in bits.
Do you think this has any relation to like Humpty Dumpty?
Oh my god, probably. Oh.
I mean, it's got kings and horses and battles and
To be honest, I would assume throughout the many, many, many years of human beings, people have had their heads blown off multiple times.
I know, but no one ever says Humpty Dumpty's an egg, do they?
No.
It's just a man who
Yeah.
fell off a wall and smashed into pieces.
Yeah. I like how because it's an egg, it's fine. Do you know what I mean? It's like this was like, oh, okay, well, we can't have an animal. A melon might be too suggestive. An egg, that's fine.
Why is a melon suggestive?
Because usually when you say someone's head is a melon is often referred to a melon, but no one, I guess, egghead. So that's suggestive too. Never mind, I take that
I'm
back.
just saying, well, let's so really, we should do an episode on this actually. Dark fairy tales.
Yeah.
Like Jack and Jill went up the hill
I
to fetch
know.
a pail of water. Jack
Yeah.
fell down, cracked his head open, and then Jill did the same thing. Like,
You love these ones, don't you?
I do.
Why? Why would they talk about this as children?
I mean, Ring of Roses is another one, but everyone knows that one. But
Yes.
I feel like every fairy tale, nursery rhyme is just sinister as fuck.
Of course. At one point, Kat tried to make up a new one about the pandemic, so we'll see if that happens. I think it's maybe too soon, but eventually.
Too soon.
Yeah. Eventually
It wasn't
maybe.
very good, to be fair.
No.
I just was ripping off Ring of Roses.
Yes. So this Irish folklore, the Dullahan, what's different about him is that he actually wields a whip made from a human corpse's spine.
That's fucking badass.
I know. I was like, that's one of my favorite things.
Mm.
And then when he stops riding, a death occurs. So it's not that he goes out and kills people. He just will ride off and then get to a spot, and sometimes that spot is where somebody will die, or he'll make a loud noise, like a yell or whatever, and that is when somebody's
So
gonna die.
is he more like an omen? Like he's
Yes.
an omen of shit stuff happening?
Yes, so in their culture, he's obviously a demonic fairy, so he's obviously not good, but at the same time, he's not specifically going out and killing anyone. So
he's like a harbinger of doom.
yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah. So and then in other versions, he's not riding a horse; he's actually in a black carriage, which is kind of cool because I think that's correlated to a lot of I saw this show and they had death riding around in a black carriage.
Well,
I think that's like a common story.
I mean, it makes sense because back in the day, I would assume a lot of fucking, like, people disappearing and getting murdered was in carriages because, like, highwaymen would just rob them and kill them and stuff. So it could have just been attached to the legend that already was. And a load of, like, carriages when they were traveling through the woods and stuff just got people got eaten by wolves and bears and shit.
Yeah.
They were just like, headless horseman did it.
Right? Yeah.
Carriage, fucked off.
So, what similar figure that I said before, the Ganshin, it means without a head, can be frightened away by wearing a gold object or putting one in his path. Which
sounds very like the vampires, just throwing some grain down, just take off your wedding ring and launch it on the ground and that's it, you're done.
Yes.
Sweet as that. There's a lot of very easy ways to escape from these things.
I think it is, and the funny thing is, it's things that people had in back in the days. So, like, it's not like,
don't worry about it, just throw some gold at it.
Throw a cell phone in his path and he'll start, like, obviously.
No, what a fucking cell phone.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
so basically, he's only rich people could stop the Headless Horseman. That's just not fair, really, is it?
Right. So in this folklore, he is said to be the embodiment of this fertility god. That's supposed to be like an evil fertility god. Demanded blood sacrifice in the form of decapitation. His worship ended with the coming of Christianity to Ireland. Funny enough.
So basically, it was just the church again, like they've done with so many things, like the Pan being the devil, and like women being witches, and fucking
exactly.
He was probably just like a really chill dude who just like rode a horse around, and they're like, no, he's gonna kill you,
right? So, frustrated by the loss of his sacrifice, he still roams the roads, calling the names of those doomed to die, and carrying his head under his arm. The flesh of the face is decayed, so I guess, like, to be fair, if they put the head back on, it wouldn't do much. With a specific, slightly odd reference to the consistency of the flesh being akin to moldy cheese.
Sounds delicious.
Recurring in many tellings of the tale. So...
Why is that a specific detail? Did he just make a head out of cheese? Or try and glue his head back together with cheese?
I don't know, because mold never really smells like cheese, does it? Like, specifically, like, cheese smells like mold, but mold doesn't just smell like cheese.
No. Feet smell like cheese.
Because I was thinking, like, if the head was moldy, then I could say, oh yeah, it was like an odd smell. But the fact that they refer to it cheese, I'm like, what is going on with that head?
I think he tried to glue his head back together in cheese. That's my theory on the matter.
So the Dullahan is recorded in fairy and folklore tales of the Irish peasantry. It says in the book, an omen that sometimes accompanies the banshee is the coach a bower, which is like the black coach, mounted by a coffin and drawn by headless horses driven by a Dullahan. It will go rumbling to your door, and if you open it, according to Croker, a basin of blood will be thrown in your face. These headless phantoms are found elsewhere in Ireland. In Norway, the heads of corpses were cut off to make their ghosts feeble, thus becoming the existence the Dullahans. So there's a lot on the Dullahan, and it's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
But like, one of the things that, so they're actually particularly active in more remote parts of the counties. I might pronounce this wrong, I'm sorry, Sligo and Down. So they're also, so they're heralds of death. And one thing that I found interesting when I was looking into this was that Irish families, I guess, during like Irish feasting periods aren't supposed to leave the home because there's a story that if you leave the home, he will come after you. So, I don't know if anyone actually to this day follows that. So how long are you
supposed to stay in your home for? Just indefinitely?
I don't know. I think you can stay on your property, but you just don't leave. I don't know. Like, that's what I thought was really cool. Because they were just like, nope, you're not allowed out. I'm sorry, guys.
You would love that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't go out. I can't come out. The Headless Horseman might get me.
The other cool thing I noticed is that they have limited power of speech. So the disembodied head is permitted to speak just once on each journey it undertakes, and then only has the ability to call the name of the person whose death it heralds. So that's kind of cool. So I guess like if you hear your name being called.
Oh no, that's spooky. I hate that, please.
Yes, exactly. So that has supernatural sight, so you can see from like far away, even in the darkest night. And you can spy on the house of a dying person, no matter where it lies. So what he looks like, other than obviously what the headless, whatever, is that there is he has raised his right hand. The head has a color and texture of stale dough or moldy cheese, like we said, and quite smooth. The idiotic grin splits the face from ear to ear, and the eyes, which are small and black, dart about like melanet flies. I don't know what kind of flies those are. The entire head glows of decaying matter, and the creature may use it as a lantern to guide its way. So that's why. So I guess it's like this, was it phosphorescence? Decaying matter is what makes it glow. So that's why people like attributed it to a jack-o'-lantern.
I was going to say, in lots of the... I actually have something to say about this later on. But in lots of depictions of him, there's a pumpkin where his head is supposed to be.
Yes.
Is there not?
Yes, that's very common. So they must have like actually read the old folklore before they actually got this. So usually he is mounted on a black steed, which thunders through the night. Uses his human spine as a whip and sends out sparks and flames. Oh, the horse sends out sparks and flames from his nostrils as it charges forth.
Badass.
So not only is he headless, but the head's also super creepy and it glows, and his horse has flames,
fire.
and he's got a human spine as a whip.
I feel like
he has good sight. He can barely talk, and he only calls out your name in a really spooky way. Like this is pretty spooky. Like I would
kind of
make this
overkill, really, isn't
Right?
it?
Yeah.
No, he's not scary enough. Give him a bloody spine whip and a horse that breathes fire. And now he's still missing something. Moldy cheese head? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then sometimes the black coach is drawn by 6 black horses and travels so fast that the friction created by its movement often sets on fire the bushes alongside the road. So, and it says, I like this, all gates fly open no matter how firmly locked they are.
Good.
So if you're trying to get through, don't
So
lock your doors.
basically, if you have a gate that you can't get open, murder someone, he'll come and yell out their name and your door will fly open and you'll be like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Basically, he's old school WD-40.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
He should be an advert where he is like selling WD-40.
That actually would be kind of cool. It'd be really good advertisement. So, yes, so gold may be able to drive him off. Don't go home or don't leave your home during any festivities, particularly around the end of August and early September. And yeah, that there's the origins. So this the origins of the Dullahan come from ancient Celtic gods. The I don't know how to pronounce this. The Crom Dubh, so it's Cromdubh, which is the fertility god. So it was worshipped by the prehistoric king, and then this is kind of where it traveled to, was to this point. And yeah, so there's also, I will get off the topic of that, but look at more of the Dullahan if you want to hear more. There's so much more. We can do entirely.
We could do like a spooky story.
Yes. There's just so much about him, so I'm just gonna go to the Scottish folklore. So the most prominent Scots tale, the Headless Horseman, concerns a man named Ewan, I think that's how you pronounce it, decapitated in a clan battle at Glen Kinnair on the Isle of Mull. The battle denied him any chance of a chieftain, and both he and his horse were headless in counts of his haunting of the area. So
I don't know why, but the idea of a headless horse frightens me more than a headless man on a horse.
I agree.
It's just
because it's so much like that. I would be terrified.
well, a head is like a third of their body. Is it just headless, or does it have have its neck off as well? Is it just like two little, like those weird creepy horse robots they made?
I have no idea.
I hate it. I hate it.
But yes, I agree that it would be way creepier. So guys, these are t-shirts that Kat and I are wearing.
This is the Fiji Mermaid, which we actually have an episode on. It's based on the one in Banff, and we have loads of other cryptid ones on our Redbubble, and they'll be hopefully on Patreon soon, and stickers and all sorts. And this is our spooky possessed food.
Yeah.
And we have lots of other scary food and weird shit on there, like other things as well.
Yeah.
And we're putting more up. Like we are going to be like really pushing a lot of this stuff so you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay. So today, sort of in the same theme, it covers like a lot of the same areas. As it's spooky season, I am talking about the origins of Halloween and its traditions. So the origins of Halloween come from the Celtic festival of Samhain, or Samhain is how it's spelled, but it's said Samhain. So it comes from my homeland, the home of the Celts, who were people who inhabited the UK, Ireland, northern France, around 2,000 years ago. Some boss-ass Celts that you might know include Vercingetorix, who rallied the tribes of Gaul against the invasion of Julius Caesar, and Boudica, the warrior queen of the Iceni, who also led a revolt against the Romans. So the Celts didn't take things laying down, basically. For the Celts, Samhain marked the final day of summer and the harvest and signified the first day of the cold, dark and harsh winter, and it was also the day before their new year, which they celebrated on November the 1st. It's the midpoint between summer solstice and the winter equinox. They believed that this day was the day of the year when the veil between the world of the living and the dead was the thinnest, and they believed on the day before their new year that ghosts could walk the earth. So you can already see it's pretty Halloween-y. The Celts believed that these ghosts could damage crops and wreak havoc. However, they also believed that these spiritual entities could help their druid priests make accurate predictions about the future, and also themselves. So to mark the event, the priests would build giant bonfires, and people would come wearing costumes to offer sacrifices of animals and crops to their gods, and they would attempt to tell each other's fortunes. So there we go. We already have the veil being thin, the costumes. The costumes they wore tended to be made of animal skins and heads. It was pretty. I just imagine
fair that's all you had, but that's still gross.
Imagine it stinks.
Yeah.
It just stinks in my head. The idea behind these costumes is thought to have been to change the wearer's personality to allow for easier communication with the spirit world. The costumes could be worn also in the hopes of the animal that you wore imbuing the wearer with the characteristics of that particular animal and giving them the power to scare away spirits or to disguise them so they wouldn't be recognized by the spirits.
Yes.
Once the Romans conquered these areas, they mixed the festival of Samhain with a couple of their own festivals, or this is one theory anyway. So one of which was a festival dedicated to Pomona, who is the Roman goddess of trees and fruits, and her symbol's an apple. And some people are like, oh, well, that's where bobbing for apples comes from.
Yeah.
However, the apple is also one of the trees that Celtic mythology has as marking the border between the world of the living and that of spirits. So in all likelihood, it actually just comes from the Celts as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then people are like, oh no, it was the Romans. Because the Romans just collated that with their own festival because it happened around a time in their calendar, and they quite often just assigned like places they conquered. They just took their festivals and were like, yeah, they're ours now, or just like, and they brought their gods into their pantheon or related to them to their own.
Yeah.
Some ways that divination was done at this time were peeling an apple in one cut and throwing the skin over your shoulder, and the shape of the skin was said to give the first initial of your future spouse.
That's fine.
I just can't imagine it ever gave any initial apart from like a C or an S or an I.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe an L.
I don't know. These are things that I probably would have done as a kid and been like, ooh, I'm gonna marry this person.
It's like the skipping rope game, eh?
Like you're like, it's not legit, but you're like, I love it anyways.
I just feel like, it seems like it was like part of just festivities, right?
Yeah.
What else did you get? Well, this is also quite Christmassy kind of thing. Items were hidden in traditional breads and cakes, and the items would have significant meanings, like a ring meaning marriage and a coin meaning wealth. I wouldn't eat this cake. It was a choking hazard.
Oh, my mom made us birthday cakes with money in them.
Like
every year.
Paper money or
no,
coins?
Like coin.
See, I'm always terrified of that because my mum's grandma ate it and swallowed it, like, because they used to put silver tuppence or whatever in a Christmas pudding, and she just swallowed it, and it was just in her for her whole life.
Oh my god, yeah, no, that was like the normal thing growing up, was like, my mom made this like cake, it was like an upside down cake, or like one of those circle cakes.
Yeah.
With like white icing on it, like M&Ms or Smarties placed on it, and she put coins and like.
I'm just like
normal thing.
The idea of biting into a coin as well makes my teeth tingle.
I think like I don't remember anyone swallowing it. I remember somebody almost eating it, and when somebody was like taking a bite, we're like, oh no, stop, because like it would be all the kids at the birthday party that would eat it. So obviously like one of them.
So your mum was just baking choking hazards into a child's birthday cake.
Yes, it was.
How times have changed.
Back in the day. I feel like people still do that, but I feel like you'd have to warn the kids, or like put it in like a Kinder. I don't know, like.
No, but they had to take Kinder Surprise away because kids get choking on shit, didn't they?
Yeah.
Only in America, I think.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. I guess she just had faith in children at that time.
Shouldn't have.
I know.
Shouldn't have. So another way that they did stuff was sometimes a bannock was baked, and the person who wanted to perform the divination would eat the whole thing in 3 bites, and it was super salty, and then they'd have to go to bed without drinking any water in complete silence. And then right after this, they were said to have a dream wherein their future spouse would offer them a drink.
Okay.
So
that would be a lovely dream.
Just sounds like trippy.
Do you
like,
want to bring me a drink?
Like, does that combination just give you nightmares, like when people eat cheese before bed?
Yeah, probably.
Like, what if I'm feeling like
Wait,
it would.
cheese before bed?
Cheese gives you nightmares. Well, that's what they say
We did
anyway.
have nightmares last night. We did eat cheese.
Yes, right before
bed.
bed. There's an episode of Buffy where this guy just, like, it's a dream episode. This guy just turns up and he's like just doing weird things with cheese. He's not really part of it apart from that, and he's got like cheese on his head, and he's like, I wear the cheese. The cheese does not wear me. It's really weird. And I feel like most people have probably seen him around in their dreams. Anyway, egg whites, they were put into water, and their shape would determine how many children you were having.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably you were having baby chickens. And all manner of other divination techniques were used. Samhain was also later incorporated into Christmas traditions and became All Hallows Eve, the day before All Saints' Day, a day to celebrate all the saints in the church.
Mm-hmm.
It was traditionally celebrated with a feast, and Halloween or All Hallows Eves, the day before the feast, was a day when people would prepare themselves with fasting and prayer. So it's definitely more fun now.
Yes.
Although the Celts seemed to have a fun time.
Yes.
And then the church ruined it.
Always.
Like, standard. And then and then people brought it back somewhat.
Into like a party scene. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is jack-o'-lanterns, is what we're going to talk about, which are similar to what you were talking about with the old Headless Horseman.
Mm-hmm.
So jack-o'-lanterns come from an Irish legend about a bloke named Jack who fucked with the devil a bunch of times, but always in his own favour. So he basically got the devil to agree not to take his soul in like a bet.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he died, when he went to heaven, God was like, well, you're an unsavoury character. You've been just bloody hanging out with the devil and become pets with him, so you're not allowed into heaven either.
Yeah.
So, but the devil couldn't break his promise, so he couldn't go to hell. So what the fuck do we do with him? So the devil just gave him a lump of burning coal and sent him off into the night. And Jack had put the coal into a carved out turnip and has been stuck roaming the earth ever since.
A turnip.
A turnip.
Yes.
Well, pumpkins aren't a thing in the UK and Ireland.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think. I think they come from America. So.
Interesting.
So,
Does it just have to be really dry?
what?
Like the dry area for you to like get a pumpkin? I know
I don't
pumpkins
know.
are not the easiest
I've
to-
carved a pepper before because we just didn't have a pumpkin because the shop ran out.
Yes.
You gotta be creative, man.
That's funny.
So he's running around with his turnip with his burning coal in it.
Yeah.
So people in Ireland and Scotland started carving scary faces into their own turnips and potatoes and putting them in doorways and windows to scare away Jack and any other wandering spirits. In England, they use beetroots. To get really creative, man.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a lot harder to get a candle into something that small as well. Maybe they just put burning coal in there.
Yeah, probably.
I don't feel like I don't know. When these people emigrated to the New World, they brought their traditions with them, using the local vegetables like pumpkins in the place of turnips.
Yeah,
and
way
probably
easier.
because it's easier and you can carve a bigger face into. I can't eat, like, I remember trying to carve this fucking pepper and it being a nightmare. So
Yes.
I can't even imagine trying to carve like a hard thing like a potato.
Or beetroot, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, other Halloween traditions, you've got trick-or-treating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's thought to have begun as the tradition of guising, in which people went out in garish masks to scare away the spirits. Sometimes they would perform a party piece in exchange for nuts and fruits, but in various regions it was a lot more hardcore, and a group of guisers might just turn up at your house and demand you pay the spirits their portion of your produce. So basically just daylight robbery.
Yeah.
Well, evening robbery. Sometimes these geysers would enter a person's house and demand to be waited on by the host and offer no gratitude. And the idea of this was that the geysers were taking the place of the actual spirits, so you wouldn't have to deal with the real ones. So you like look after them, and then the real spirits are like, well, you did your bit already. Which seems weird.
Yeah.
Food was left out and altars were set up for the spirits as well. So again, connections for trick-or-treating.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, souling became a thing, where at this time of the year, I'm assuming this is like more when the church was a thing, poor people would go door to door begging, and people would give them soul cakes, which were scones with a cross on the top in exchange for the recipient offering up prayers for their household. So it's like goodwill kind of, I guess that's crossover between Christmassy kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like just a winter thing. I guess life is harsher in winter, so
Yes.
if you had money, it was goodwill to give people food.
Yeah.
Halloween pranks are also thought to have their origins in Celtic Samhain, wherein tricks were typically blamed on fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Probably people like the Headless Horseman.
Yes.
And they were just like, oh no, it was the fairies.
Well, it's interesting because when I was reading into that,
Mhm.
fairies aren't really fairies as we think of them.
Mhm.
Fairies are like spirits, is what they call
Oh,
them.
they're fucked up in like
Yeah.
old folklore.
Yeah.
Like they come and like steal babies and replace them with
Yes.
their own,
Yeah.
what do they, changeling babies.
Yeah.
And they kidnap people and take them into the fairy world, and they curse and children and shit. They're fucking assholes.
Yeah.
I don't know where this idea of these little butterfly things came from.
I think there are probably different species.
We should
If,
probably
like,
do an
anything.
episode on fairies.
Oh, I love that.
Maybe that'll be something we can do in the spooky season, because
Yep.
they are pretty scary.
Yes.
Even the tooth fairy is scary.
I know, that freaks me out.
Like, just why?
Mm-hmm.
I can only think it's sinister.
Right?
Why are you collecting bits of bones, you weird little fuck?
Yeah. No, I agree. No, it is very, very awkward and very weird. Especially like the portrayal in like was it Santa Claus movies? Where like there's like an
Okay.
old man and he's in like a diaper or whatever.
I do not remember that, but that sounds sinister
Or
as
am I
fuck.
I may be thinking of a different movie. But they definitely have different portrayals and none of them are very flattering.
I just think of fucking Family Guy, where he just comes in and like rolls around in the bottom
Yes.
teeth. Also, I remember you had your baby teeth in a box and they dropped out on the floor, and honestly, that is one of the most disgusting things that has ever happened.
I'm not going to tell you where they currently are because
Oh god, are they in this room? I'm just you brought your teeth to another country with you.
No, but it's not a good
Oh
spot.
god, they're on my stuff, aren't they? They're on my stuff.
They're just like, I just got lazy and threw my box of like old kid shit.
So there's just random loose teeth in our stuff we packed up before we left Canada. I can't. I'm gonna have nightmares about that. About where your fucking teeth are. You are opening those boxes. I am not opening your dirty little tooth box.
Well, the thing is, I dumped it in there and then I was gonna take them out and I couldn't find them. So they're just somewhere in there loose. And I feel like a few fell out onto the floor.
So you just left your teeth in our old house?
We would have vacuumed them by now, but they might be.
That means they're just sitting in the vacuum. I'm gonna tell Brooklyn there's teeth in there.
I'm not sure where like there's like 7 of them, so I'm not sure where they all are. Yeah, so just as a disclaimer, when I was 4 years old, my teeth started falling out, and by the time I was 7, they had all fallen out. I was really, really young.
She still has no teeth.
And obviously, as a little kid, I thought that was really cool. Maybe as kids get older, they're like, "What the fuck am I gonna do with this tooth?" As like a 5-6-year-old, I'm like, "This is the sweetest thing ever." So I like kept all my teeth, and then I just never wanted
You
to.
didn't
like,
get them money from the creepy fairy?
Yeah, I did, and then the fairy left it, and I got money. But I didn't.
So it was
my
like
mom.
2 for 1. You were
I
like,
was not so. Yeah.
Ah! Okay. And on that disgusting note, you can find us on Instagram at Strange Stuff Sideshow. You can find us on TikTok at Strange Stuff Sideshow. You can email us at noshamesideshow@gmail.com if you have any ideas for episodes, or you have any requests for minisodes, or designs, anything you really fancy. Am I missing anything?
No.
Alright then. Well, you have yourself a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time you're listening to this, and we will be back very soon with more spooky stuff.
Yep.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.